came out, I've gotten information about a whole lot more cases. So it's enough to make a new book. Of course, it takes me a long time. I'm calling the book Forbidden Archaeology 2 as a working title. It takes me a while to put these things together.
Oh, they do, because they're large books.
Thorough. Yeah. They're big books, and I have to do the research, because I have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and things like that. But it's very interesting that some of the information that I'm getting is coming from listeners of your show and shows like yours. It's very, very interesting. For example, one listener wrote to me, after hearing me on your show, I believe it was a couple of years ago. He wrote, you got a great book, and he was from Oregon. He said, here in the Waldo Mining District near O'Brien at the Easterly Mine, stone bowls and pestles were found in cemented ancient riverbed. They were so firmly cemented, the miners had to remove them with extreme care. Again, thank you for the great book. So I asked him, all right, I wrote back to him, and I said, okay, you told me about this case. Do you have any kind of documentation about it? So he sent me a newspaper article, very interesting newspaper article from the year 1904 from the Rogue River Courier up there in Oregon. And the title of the article was Relics of Ancient Age, Mortars of Prehistoric Time Found in Weimer Brothers Mine. So the report gave very detailed information about the geological situation where these artifacts were found. So they're found in old gravel of an ancient river channel, 50 or 60 feet below the surface, firmly embedded in the cemented gravel near the bedrock. So then from that information, I went to some scientific reports. I began looking at the scientific geological reports about that area to see if I could get any idea how old those particular layers where the human artifacts were found. And it turned out they're over 2 million years old. So that's one of the cases that will be in this book that I'm working on now, Forbidden Archaeology 2, and I think it's very significant. It came to my attention through one of the listeners.
The Vedics that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
They talked about flying machines. They talked about wars. Now, were you ever able to determine whether these flying machines were ours of the time, our kind of technology, human technology, or were they witnessing extraterrestrial visitations?
It appears they were of several different kinds, because as I mentioned before, it appears that we live in a multi-level cosmos. So there are very detailed descriptions of these aircraft and spacecraft. They're called vimanas, given in these ancient Sanskrit writings. They're not like just some vague mentions. They're very detailed descriptions of them. Some of them were made of iron and metals like we're familiar with.
Sure.
And they came from other parts of our level of the cosmos. And so they're described. Some of those are described. And some of them come from this more subtle region, from the more subtle regions of the cosmos, and they have different kinds of abilities. Yeah, it's very strange. These, if you look carefully at the reports of the modern UFO phenomenon, you'll see that, some of them appear to be quite clunky machines, but some of them, once I was giving a lecture on forbidden archaeology in Germany, and there was a pilot for one of the major American airlines that flies across the Atlantic. He had come to the lecture, and afterwards he was talking to me. And we got onto the topic of UFOs for some reason. And he told me how once he was flying across the Atlantic in a 747, he said he saw coming directly towards him, he saw an object, flying object coming directly towards the plane.
Scared the heck out of him.
And it was closing at just this fantastic rate of speed. And he said just before it hit the plane, it just went straight up.
Oh.
Just straight up.
Did he see detail on it?
And he said, he told me, he said, but we never report stuff like this because the second that you're supposed to report it, but he said if you report it, then your career is pretty much finished. You'll be investigated. You'll. So the point being that the modern reports of some of these UFOs show that they conduct themselves in ways that no plane made out of metal could possibly endure the G forces. You can't do a 90-degree straight up turn like that at that rate of speed. The plane would just disintegrate.
Those are great stories, Michael.
So I think that, as I said, a lot of there's one group of the modern UFO alien abduction type researchers that see that the phenomenon sort of shades more into the mystical, paranormal, spiritual type of area. So I think these ancient Sanskrit writings, they describe both kinds of things. They described some of these craft as being made of ordinary metals and things like that, but others are being more composed of more subtle energies and operating on a different level.
God, that's incredible stuff. Can you imagine being in a plane, seeing that coming at you? And I'm sure you had a co-pilot, right?
Yeah, he didn't talk about what his co-pilot said. But
that was a expletive deleted, right?
But there's just so much reporting on these things. Just a few weeks ago, I was giving a talk about forbidden archaeology at a conference called the Forbidden Knowledge Conference. It was held in Stoke-on-Trent in England. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you're going to have a forbidden knowledge conference, you got to have the forbidden archaeologist come.
And he's got to have you. That's right.
Sure, but for me, a lot of times when I go to these conferences, the most interesting thing or most pleasant thing for me is to meet some of the other researchers. So I met Nick Pope, who was until a few years ago he was with the British Defense Department. He was in the department that dealt with UFO reports, and he was just confirming that these things are there. It's really amazing. So you have reports coming not just from crackpot people. You've got people who are officials in the military establishment reporting that these things are definitely out there.
I think more and more of these reports, Michael, are coming from good, solid witnesses.
Yeah.
I really do. But again, back to the Vedics real quickly before the top of the hour. UFOs or ours? What do you think?
I think they were coming. Most of the ones that are reported in these ancient Sanskrit writings, the Vedas, are from other parts of the cosmos. They're not ours.
Ah, okay. So they were witnesses to these events.
Yes.
That's fascinating all by itself. Michael, tell us the incredible story of these dinosaur prints with the human footprints right near them. And was this Nebraska where these were found?
I think you're talking about the Paluxy River case, which comes from Texas. Originally I was a little skeptical about those. I didn't put them into my book, Forbidden Archaeology, because one of the people who originally reported them, a Christian creationist scientist named John Morris Jr., withdrew his claims. He had originally claimed there were some human footprints next to dinosaur footprints, but then he decided, what he thought were human footprints were kind of erosion patterns or something like that. So I sort of put that file away. But then, again, a listener to your show, to Coast, I believe, got in touch with me. She was an archaeology